Today, we are going to be looking at a special kind of rock called a geode, and we're going to try and paint our own geode using watercolor paint and salt. A geode is a rock that looks pretty normal on the outside, but when cracked open, has these magical shiny crystals inside. Now, some of those crystals can be different colors, or they can even be dyed to be a different color, like this pink one here. But what they have in common is that they all look like normal rocks on the outside, but they have the magic inside. Now, we are going to be making our geode using a watercolor technique called wet on wet, and then we're going to add a special ingredient to our paintings as well. So what you're going to do to start with, on your paper, you are going to draw a rock-like shape. Now, these are going to be an organic shape, so it's not going to be a perfect oval or a perfect circle. And the edges are kind of bumpy, like you can see. I'm going to draw that with an oil pastel just so we can keep all of our colors kind of contained in that area. Now, the wet on wet watercolor technique is just like it sounds. You put wet water, is water wet? You put water on your paper first and then you add the color. Now, the water that you add first, the plain water that you add first, is going to allow the watercolor paint to move around and kind of mix and blend and give that cool effect. Now, I am going to try and keep this plain water inside of my shape. That way it does not go outside of my oil pastel line, just as best as I can. Now, the colors that you're gonna pick are going to be colors that are next to each other in your watercolor tray. These are called analogous colors. So I have added some plain water, a lot of plain water, all in my little rock shape. Now I'm gonna start from the outside and work in. So I'm going to pick two colors. I think I'm gonna go with red. I'm gonna pick two colors to be my analogous colors. Now I'm going to start, see now I used a lot of water, look how cool that looks. I'm gonna start along the edge, and this is where my paint is going to really start to spread to the middle. We want the color on the outside to be the darkest, and then it's going to gradually get lighter as it goes in. Now, I'm gonna wash my brush and get my second color. I think I'm gonna do orange or pink. I'm gonna go with pink this time. So again, you're using colors that are next to each other in the tray. So these two, or these two, or these two. I'm gonna do pink and red. I'm gonna get my pink. Now, when you do your second color, I'm gonna skip a little bit of space so that I have a little bit of white still showing. So instead of painting right beside my red, I'm gonna scoot inward towards the center of my rock. These colors are going to spread on your paper because we added that plain water first. Now you can also just go back in with water, plain water again, if you want those to spread out some more. Now I do want there to still be some white showing. So I'm gonna try and encourage my paint to go in towards the middle. And then I'm gonna get a little bit more of my first color, a little bit more red for the center. Now we have a lot of water on our paper, and that's great because that's really helping our colors to kind of mix together. And it's time for the special ingredient. While you're rock painting, is still very wet. You want to sprinkle some salt into your paint. Now, nothing magical is really gonna happen right away. You can kind of see that salt is absorbing some of the paint and some of the pigment of that color. But the real magical thing is going to happen when it is totally dry. So you'll have to stay tuned for the results. You want to get all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to go in towards the middle as well. Now, like I said, you can kind of see like that was a really good example. The way that these are going to dry is going to be the really fun part. So right now, not a whole lot is happening, and that's okay. When it is dry, you will have the magic. So once you have completely finished one of your geodes, then you can start another. Now you can make this a different shape or kind of similar, it's up to you. But again, you're just gonna start with your plain water and fill in that shape. Now, what I have learned from this guy is that it really worked the best when I used a lot of water. So I am going to use a lot of water in my second one, and I'll encourage you to use a lot of water in yours as well. Now again, I still do want to keep my paint contained in that little organic shape that you drew first with your oil pastel. But now I think I'm ready to start my color. I think this one I want to do green and yellow. I'm gonna do some green first. So I'm gonna get that color on my brush, and then I am going to start by painting along the outside of my geode. You can kind of see how that paint is starting to go in towards the middle. Now I do want the outside to be darker. So I am getting more paint on my brush without adding any extra water. That way that color is very saturated. All right, I'm gonna switch to yellow. But my yellow, I'm going to scoot in towards the middle. I'm not going to paint it right next to the green. I'm going to go more in here. And because our paper is wet, it will mix with that green by itself. I'm still going to leave some of that space white, however. Now, if this starts to happen, that is obviously okay. A geode is a rock made naturally, not in a lab. So they are going to be unique. They're all different. They're not perfect. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm going to get my darker in the middle. Still just trying to leave a little bit of white. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add my salt. Super important that when you are adding your salt, that your paper is still wet. All right, so depending on how much time we have, you may have time to do 2, you might have time to do 3, I'm not sure. But very important when we are finished and it is time to clean up. Leaving your paper flat is very important. So when we go to clean up, I want you to very carefully make sure that your paper is on your messy mat, laying very flat, and then I will come and help you get it to the drying rack. That way it does not tilt or drip, because our oil pastel is really the only thing right now that's keeping it contained. So if we tilt our paper, it's gonna kind of jump over that oil pastel line, and we'll have a big mess. So very important to keep your painting so flat while we are cleaning up. So do not pick it up when you're done.